Well, good morning.
Good morning, Albert.
I appreciate y'all coming out. I'm Albert Culbreath, research plant pathologist at the University of Georgia. I work on the foliar diseases of peanut. That includes the leaf spots, early leaf spot, late leaf spot, peanut rust, tomato spotted wilt, whatever else pops up. Did want to talk about leaf spot management this morning. And we'll talk about several things, but I'm going to be concentrating a lot on the early season of the early part of the season for leaf spot control. And for management of any disease, we try to take an integrated approach if at all possible. With something like tomato spotted wilt virus, that's absolutely essential. But for leaf spot, some of the things that affect that: rotation, the cultural practices, resistant cultural bars if available. And in our case with peanuts in the southeastern United States, we're very heavily dependent upon fungicides. Just first on the rotation, I won't be showing data on it, but did want to point out the effect of relative risk of rotation. Basically, the longer you can be out of peanut, the better in terms of minimizing your risk for leaf spot. The leaf spot fungi, early leaf spot, late leaf spot, really only have one host, and that's peanut. So anytime you can be away from peanut, reducing the inoculum for that. One thing I wanted to point out as well with regard to cultural practices is the planting date effect. Planting date has such a huge effect on spotted wilt. We really shifted our entire planting window because of that disease. But with some of these, well, basically with all the new varieties we've had come out in the southeastern United States in the last few years, a lot more forgiving on the early side of the season. We can go back to planting early May, late April. So we're in the relatively higher risk, but we can handle that with our varieties. But if we can plant during that part of the season, we can actually reduce our risk for leaf spot diseases. Once we get into mid-May and into June, the risk for leaf spot goes up. In fact, we plant most all of our fungicide trials in mid-May or later to try to maximize the chances for separating treatments, give things an acid test. Tillage, there was a lot of emphasis in reduced tillage, especially from energy savings, soil building, managing tomato spotted wilt virus. Tillage, reduced tillage, something like strip till, suppresses or delays the leaf spot epidemics compared to conventional tillage. With Palmer amaranth and the burrower bug, a lot of people who had moved to reduced tillage have moved back to conventional, and I think that's warranted. But anybody for whom reduced tillage would work would typically get about a week to 10-day delay in the start of the leaf spot epidemics with that. As far as varieties, most of the varieties that we have available now are very susceptible to both the early and late leaf spot. We look at the new cultivars and breeding lines that are coming out to compare those. We work with several breeders trying to develop cultivars with better leaf spot resistance. But as far as what we've got now, Georgia 06G, Georgia Greener, 07W and 09B are susceptible. 09B, based on previous work, is even more susceptible. And the new variety 10T we were looking at, it has excellent resistance to tomato spotted wilt virus. We wanted to look at it from a leaf spot standpoint too. It had shown some promise in light pressure plots in 2011, but we were combining that with a full season program using chlorothalonil in the first 2 sprays, and then a tank mix of chlorothalonil and tebuconazole in the next 4, compared to 3 sprays and then a none. And basically, what I wanted to cover here is the relative susceptibility of the varieties. 06G and Georgia Greener, 07W, similar in terms of the end of the season ratings in the completely non-treated controls. 09B, more susceptible than anything else in the test. Tifton, as we'd seen in the past, does have a moderate level of resistance to early and late leaf spot, but Georgia 10T we saw was in that same ballpark, so a little resistance in that. 10T is a later maturing variety, so it takes a little longer, but still more forgiving in terms of leaf spot management based on the results we had in 2012. 2012 was a good year for leaf spot. Actually, the application of 3 sprays in this trial held up very well, but the variety still separated out. And I think the key was the timing of those. We got sprays on at a key time, and then especially in the Tifton and 10T, it held up. We won't go into the white mold and yield part of those, but the 10T held up very well yield-wise in this trial and had a low rate of white mold as well, so one might have a fit in terms of reduced input situations. But covering our rotation, our cultural and genetic aspects of leaf spot management, those can all be important in terms of leaf spot, but none of those by themselves with the cultivars we have are adequate for leaf spot control, especially in a year that's anywhere close to typical. We are very heavily dependent upon fungicides for leaf spot management. We're also very heavily dependent upon fungicides for management of white mold, Sclerotium rofsii, stem rot, whatever you want to call it. That's the monster that we're dealing with right now. So a lot of our fungicide regimes are geared first at what do we do to control white mold. Well, some of the things that we've seen in the past, the early season application of fungicides can help with the control of the white mold disease. I've seen that in-furrow applications of the fungicide Proline can help with CBR management, and also seems to have some effect on white mold. So from a leaf spot standpoint, one of the things I wanted to do in 2012 was to look at how these in-furrow and early season banded and broadcast applications of fungicides that are applied primarily for the soil-borne disease control, how are they going to affect leaf spot epidemics? So to do that, we were going to compare the in-furrow sprays versus a 21-day after planting spray. We used Georgia 09B, which is we just talked about among the more susceptible varieties we've got now in terms of leaf spot. We planted our borders on the 21st of May, which is late by historic standards and puts us into a higher risk from a leaf spot just in itself. But we waited and planted our plots on the 15th of August when early leaf spot was already roaring. We had no hope of taking these to yield. We just wanted to see what these early season applications would do on leaf spot development. We used a banded application for the treatment made on September 7th. It was 21 days after planting, and of course the in-furrow treatments went out when we planted the plots. There were no follow-up sprays in this trial, and we monitored the disease progress through those first few days. This is a shot of what we were looking at as of the end of August. Again, these were planted on August 15th. These were our border rows. They were completely non-sprayed, tons of leaf spot in those by the time those plants were up and going. For the 21-day banded application, we used our middle nozzle on a 6-spray boom. We were putting out about a 12-inch band. Now, Tim Brenneman has had excellent results from a white mold management with narrower beds, with narrower bands than that. This one was done as much for logistics as anything. That was the simplest way we could concentrate that fungicide into a band and put it out here. So we used a single flat fan nozzle directly over that row. So we were basically putting out a 3x rate of the fungicide directly over the row. And just a few days, well, this was as of the 10th of September, but very young peanuts, but already an awful lot of leaf spot there. We talk sometimes about juvenile resistance and such. That was not evident in this trial. By the time the peanuts were up and growing out of the ground, they apparently were susceptible to the leaf spot because it clobbered them. On the September 13th, this was the non-treated control compared to the plants that received the 5.7 fluid ounces of Proline in furrow. A very striking level of control at this point in time with that in-furrow spray. Again, that treatment typically would go out for CBR management, but for early season, there is leaf spot activity there. From a practical standpoint, though, we don't have that much of don't have much leaf spot inoculum in a typical field there. Keep in mind, in this field, we had just absolute inoculum storm. But looking at the effect of the in-furrow versus the 21-day band for the leaf spot disease progress, then again, we put out our post-emergent spray here. The black lines, the non-treated check. The Proline in-furrow did an excellent job of keeping the plants clean till about 30 days after the planting. But very shortly after that, you had a rate of increase that was just about equal to what we saw in the non-treated plot. So we basically ran out of any efficacy against leaf spot after 30 days with that treatment. So that didn't give us a prolonged protection. But where we put out a 21-day application, we got about another 21 days of excellent control with either the Proline at 5.7 ounces or Headline at 9 ounces. That carried us on out to about 42 days after planting. I wish I had done one more rating to see if this got, but we know we got 21 days of excellent protection there. So with that, I think would be in a time of the year where we typically would be needing leaf spot control, and the better control, the better off we'll be later in the season. So I think these early season applications show promise. Again, from a lot of previous work shows promise from managing white mold, but I think it's going to help put us ahead of the game in terms of managing leaf spot as well. So in summary, that in-furrow application of Proline provided excellent control of leaf spot for about 30 days, but in terms of how much benefit that will be for season-long leaf spot control, I don't know. It doesn't seem to me to show a lot of progress, a lot of promise for that. The later application, I think, does show a lot more promise in terms of serving as the base for a very strong fungicide regime for leaf spot control. In addition to the in-furrow and banded, though, we wanted to look at the comparison of similar type timings of a banded application like we did in the previous test with a broadcast. And again, another late planted test. We used Georgia 09B, again, a very susceptible variety. The first application, we waited until the epidemic was already well underway, You use the banded applications again in a 12-inch band, just one nozzle over the row. We didn't make any follow-up sprays, and the follow-up sprays were just straight chlorothalonil until about 5 weeks later. We compared that to a full season 14-day calendar spray of chlorothalonil. We did have some rust in the test, but it was mostly early leaf spot. The fungicides we were looking at was the Proline 5.7 ounces and Headline at 9 ounces that we looked at in the previous test. We also looked at 18 ounces of Abound, again in a 12-inch band versus broadcast in each of these and compared to a 14-day interval. This was we used for the broadcast application 6 flat fan nozzles about a foot apart. For our banded applications, just one of those, and again we're putting out basically the 3x, putting all of our fungicide into the one band directly over the row. As far as the final leaf spot ratings, we did have a lot of leaf spot. The non-treated were just about completely defoliated. A lot of those plants were dead by the end of the season. A lot of defoliation in all of them, but we had a chance to sort out the relative effect of the variety, the fungicides. The Proline broadcast was not quite as good as the Proline band. With Headline at 9 ounces, there really wasn't much difference between those two. With Abound, was not as good as Proline or Headline for leaf spot control. That's really not surprising based on what we've seen before. With some improvement with the leaf spot control with the band versus broadcast. And again, we had a lot of leaf spot even in the 14-day chlorothalonil. So with any of these, we were bringing a lot to the table in terms of leaf spot control. And again, a lot of these early season applications would especially in a banded situation, would be geared toward white mold management. But if you're looking at leaf spot management, either of these I think would serve as a really nice base in terms of putting us well into the season with good leaf spot control. So again, the early season banded application to Proline or Abound, and improve the leaf spot control compared to the broadcast. Little difference between the broadcast versus banded in terms of with a Headline fungicide, and either of those with either broadcast or banded with Proline or Headline provided very good leaf spot control for us. And I think the key will be for white mold. What's going to be the best for us? That. One more of the post-infection type applications. Again, a susceptible variety 09B. We waited until the epidemic was well underway. No follow-up sprays after just one application, and using a field with a lot of early leaf spot. We were looking at Proline, combination of Proline plus Topsin, Headline, reduced rate of Headline plus Topsin, and then a reduced rate of Headline 6 ounces plus a full 7 ounces of muscle or tebuconazole for that we were inserting primarily geared toward the white mold control to see if we could boost the white mold of the Headline, but all did very well in terms of reducing the leaf spot compared to the non-treated control. Keep in mind, again, that was just one application. So I think any of those would have potential to improve our leaf spot control compared to just a straight chlorothalonil type application. A similar one, same variety, late application, and no follow-up sprays. This one, we're just comparing Proline and Headline. In this case, with an even heavier pressure, there was an advantage of Headline over the Proline for leaf spot control. But this was at the end of the season. The non-treated check was basically dead. The 5.7 ounces of Proline. Again, just one application. You still had green stems, but we still had a lot of leaves left in the headline application. But I think both of these fungicides provide a base that if you're coming back with just straight chlorothalonil or really any of the various fungicide regimes that we have available, those have an awful lot of potential for improving our leaf spot control. So I did want to talk about leaf spot control with the new fungicide Fontelis. We've looked at it for several years in full season regime and different application regimes. One thing I wanted to do was compare that in a head-to-head comparison with Provost at 4 sprays compared to Fontelis at 4 sprays, Provost at 3 versus Fontelis at 3, with either chlorothalonil in the first 2 applications of the season or just 1 application of headline. And really the Provost Fontelis comparison was very similar with the 4 sprays or the 3 sprays. This was one of the few treatments I've ever had where Provost wasn't significantly better than the chlorothalonil check. And I don't know what happened there, but again, an extremely high pressure trial, but we were able to get good control. And again, the Fontelis similar, or at least in similar or even numerically a little better than the Provost in this particular trial. So I think this new fungicide has good white mold activity, but also good activity on leaf spot. Wanted to talk too about some of the standards. We've been using tebuconazole for years, still very active against white mold. In a lot of cases, we do have resistance to the leaf spot pathogens to this one, but using it in mixtures with a chlorothalonil, it still has utility. Continuing to look at that, the Chlorothalonil Standard, again, a lot of spots there, but not that much defoliation. That mixture gave actually a little better leaf spot control than the Bravo Standard, and about a 900-pound yield increase to that, I think primarily because of the white mold control we were picking up with that. A little on quash then as well. We got good leaf spot control with the Provost, better in this case than the Chlorothalonil Standard, and then the combination of chlorothalonil with plus quash, comparable to that of the Provost treatment, and about halfway between it and the chlorothalonil treatment. Yields not that much difference between the two, but again, this regime held up very well. And finally, wanted to revisit the combinations of chlorothalonil and flutolanil. In this case, we were looking at full season application of Bravo. We got a good level of leaf spot control considering the pressure we had with a 5 on the Florida scale, compared to just a 4 application to Convoy. Flutolanil doesn't have activity against leaf spot, so we didn't expect leaf spot control, but I wanted to see what the combinations of those are doing. But yield increase because of leaf spot control with the Bravo, yield increase of about 1,200 pounds just with the Convoy, I think because of the soil-borne disease control. But then when you put the two together, combining those, you're getting good leaf spot control with just the chlorothalonil, and then about 1,000 pounds yield increase over just the Bravo. So that combination we've been looking at for several years now, still holding up very well. No resistance problems that we've seen at all with chlorothalonil. It's not the most effective fungicide we have for leaf spot control, but it still does very well, especially if you can keep it on ahead of the leaf spot epidemic. So with that, I think that'll wind me up for today. I appreciate everybody coming out.